Well, according to Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, it's estimated that at least 30% of first responders will develop behavioral health conditions, including depression, maybe post-traumatic stress disorder. First responder mental health expert Al Eskenazi, founder of the Community Police Relations Foundation, is with us today. We're talking about people that have to be there in place because the fabric of our community depends on them. And you say good mental health just as important as good physical health.
Well, that's very true. Just think of any category you'd like to think about, whether it's a baseball player or a kid going to school or a teacher. And now add to that all the stress and threats that a law enforcement officer faces on a daily basis. But beyond that, just think of the trauma that a law enforcement officer sees day and night throughout the week, throughout their career. So we had a situation where at 2:30 a.m. in the morning, the first responder, a law enforcement officer, had to appear at a domestic violence call. And when he walks in, he resolved the circumstance. But meanwhile, on the floor is a battered woman and a battered child. And he has to deal with that now. How do you go home after seeing that and to your family, to your spouse, to your children, and not be affected over that? And that is the great circumstance that these officers face.
Now that's my question to you. How do they go home and prioritize and separate? Do they compartmentalize? What do they do?
Well, in the perfect world, you would compartmentalize, and perhaps that would be possible if it was a one-off event. But these law enforcement officers are seeing these events constantly, whether it's daily or weekly or monthly, throughout a career. So after a while, you can no longer compartmentalize. It takes over, it gets the best of you. And so that Community Police Relations Foundation, in conjunction with the Boulder Crest Foundation, has created a program called Struggle Well. We've put well over 6,000 law enforcement officers and first responders through the program to deal with mental stresses, physical stresses, and how to sustain oneself. We don't like post-traumatic stress disorder. We take a negative and turn it into a positive. Post-traumatic growth. That's what we are about. As a matter of fact, that officer at 2:30 in the morning that has that call, starting September 1st, will now be able to call a peer-to-peer responder to be there for them. That means that a certified officer who's been through the peer-to-peer program will show up when called, no matter what day, what time, or what part of the year. We now have peer-to-peer programs beginning.
So help is just a phone call away. Do you think that this type of mental health will help a lot of communities be able to retain officers longer too? There's such a shortage. Many of them are leaving. Many of them don't want to join.
You know, the best way to retain law enforcement officers is to tell them that you want them. Too much has happened in our society over these years to alienate law enforcement officers. So, you know, I had an officer say to me, happened to be a state trooper, said to me that, I don't understand, Al. I served our country in the Marines. I was honorable. I did my duty there. Now I come into law enforcement for 20 plus years, and I'm dealing with all sorts of horrible situations, child rapists. I'm dealing with human traffickers. Why is my children being persecuted in school because their father is a law enforcement officer? Society has an obligation to support those that support us. And it's up to all of us, our communities, our churches, our media, our politicians, to support and show support so that a law enforcement officer can go out knowing that he's doing the right thing and he has this community support. Now, you need to know, my foundation, I'm in every one of the most difficult communities, whether it's New York or South Florida or even Chicago. And we find that the communities, the people, support law enforcement officers. The relationship is very, very strong. But then other people are knocking them for whatever their personal gain is in the circumstance.
Before we go, give them the name of the foundation. There are wives and family members watching who want someone to call. What's the name? How do they call?
So the foundation is Community-Police Relations Foundation. We go on the CPR Foundation, but our website, cprfcharity.org. cprfcharity.org.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having us.